Welcome to
Winterfest.
Winterfest.
Welcome to the fourth day of the 12 days of Winterfest from Cama Beach State Park. Hi, I'm Susan Palmer, and if this is the first video you've watched, you have a lot to catch up on. Today we're going to be looking at 2 quilts and talking with 3 quilters. The first quilt is another beautiful quilt from Pam Fredrickson, and the second quilt is a collaboration between 2 quilters, Garnet Temple-Iman and Nancy Sneed. I think you're going to enjoy both quilts and the conversations. Enjoy. Hi, Pam. Thanks for doing this. So tell me, how and when did you begin your quilt life?
It actually started, if you're old enough to remember, the bicentennial, when quilting got a renaissance, and I was a member of a quilt club at the time. I didn't even know the other members in it. I was working full-time and they met during the day. There were 24 of us. So every 2 years we got to have a quilt. And it meant that you had to cut out all the blocks and come up with the directions, and they got farmed out to 24 people, and you hoped for the best when they came back, that they would all go together. And for my first quilt, I had to drive 170 miles to get fabric. In the 70s, there was no cotton fabric. It was all polyester double knits. And I drove from Davenport, Iowa to Des Moines, Iowa to a place called Mrs. Wigg's Cabbage Patch that somebody tipped me off to, and bought calico, dark green, light green, and some bright yellow to go with it. Wasn't a lot of choice at the time. And so that was actually my first quilt. And I cheated. I made it into a duvet cover instead of a quilt. It still to this day has never been quilted. So I was with that group for 4 years. So I got 2 quilts.
Twins plus one. This is a great story on this.
The twins plus one is that Peg Hayes Tipton, who is in charge of our quilts at the state park, is a twin plus one. She has identical twin brothers, and she was the triplet. They are Peg, Peter, and Paul. So giving the quilt that name was kind of a nod to them. This one was made with batik I saw on a Pinterest quilt. And I thought, oh, I've made that block before, and I like that. And either the quilt design or the size of the piece of batik led me to make 2 of each color. It might be one of those blocks that goes in one direction and then you've got enough left over to do a second one. Anyway, somehow to do this, because it comes out to what, 35 blocks, 5 by 7?
Yep.
I needed an extra one, and I had extra of one of the fabrics. Then I thought, oh, this was kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. I could make it into a puzzler. The idea is, can you find the one of which there are 3?
How did you decide to put this back together?
I must have just come across that piece of fabric in the middle. The borders match the front. This is one of my favorite quilts. I like this one very much.
It is really pretty. And yeah, the guys are our biggest fans, and Peg does such a beautiful job keeping the quilts. One thing I love that she does is that she folds and refolds all the quilts constantly so that they never get big creases in the quilts, which I think is amazing for her to take that dedication to. That's quilt number 518, Twins Plus One by Pam Fredrickson. Okay, please welcome Nancy Sneed and Garnet Temple-Iman. Thank you for coming, ladies. Garnet, I asked Nancy in an earlier interview, so I'll ask you now. How and when did you start your quilt life?
I started mine. I grew up on a farm, so we did sewing. We sewed our clothes and stuff. My mother sewed, but anyway, I had never quilted. So in about 2001 or 2002, my sister-in-law and I were sitting on the couch, and we were watching, like, I don't know, Eleanor Burns or Nancy Zeman, something like that. She was making Christmas stockings, quilted ones, and we went crazy. That's what we wanted to do. So we got together with her sister Judy, who is a wonderful, accomplished quilter, and I made a pillow and she made a stocking, and I just took off after that. I thought it was so much fun.
Very nice. All right, well, let's bring up your beautiful quilts. All right, and as we discussed before, when I was quilting this quilt, I thought, boy, some of these the ugliest fabrics I've ever seen in my life.
And I agree. I felt the same when I was cutting it up. Nancy and I were sort of we were wanting to use up the fabrics that we had down at Cama Beach that have been in the bins and have been around for a while. And we wanted to set ourselves a challenge to make a beautiful quilt out of a lot of odd scraps. So
we went to a quilt store in Leavenworth with the idea that we wanted to make a quilt together. And they had this quilt made in a couple of different ways. And we thought, now this would be a good quilt to use those fabrics on. And so that's what sort of started it all.
both Nancy and I really enjoyed the Leavenworth Quilt Company when we were there. We were on an RV trip together, and so we were able to go in there and shop together. But that little shop is small, but it's just chock full of lovely quilts, inspirational things that you want to make. And she's got the fabrics there. We were just so inspired by going in there. And so it's a quilt shop where she really pays attention to her fabrics and what she offers to the public. Quilts hanging in the fabric store in Leavenworth were really inspiring. And we could see right away then that this would be something we could use with all sorts of different weird fabrics, that it would really work. And we did it.
And what was the construction process like for you?
Well, we collaborated. We went through the bins and pulled out fabric, and then Garnet cut the bigger squares or cut bigger pieces. And then I went through and cut more exactly what the pattern called for, and cut the little yellow squares in the middle and the star points. And we did all that for over several Cama Beach meetings. And then Cama Beach had a retreat in February, right before COVID. And so we just got going when we were at the retreat and stitched it up at the retreat.
Beautiful.
It was really fun to do that. The Over the Rainbow Lodge that we can meet at is a beautiful place, and we had so much fun collaborating on how it should go together. I mean, when you get all these crazy blocks, you have to put them up on the wall and sort of see how they go together. And I thought that was a lot of fun to figure that all out.
Other Cama Beach members there that were saying, no, you should put this one over here, this one there. And taking pictures with monocolor and trying to see the different way the stars were playing together and stuff. So
I think for me, this is really a traditional quilt because it's made from scraps from the things that we had at Cama Beach, and quilts are oftentimes made from the things that we have and we want to use. And so that's what's wonderful about this quilt. We used up all of these crazy things, and that makes it a really traditional quilt.
Indeed, and it's beautiful. The crazy fabrics make the quilt, and it's a special quilt that definitely deserves to be in somebody's house. So whoever buys this is going to be very lucky and very excited when they get it. Let's take a look at the back.
This was really Nancy we used everything, and she put this together.
well, we just had extra squares, and it was a matter of, rather than having a plain back, and when you just have six or eight squares left over, you don't want to do another quilt. You want to just get it done. And so I like putting extras on the back of quilts and stuff just to, and then it takes away from just plain backs. It gives the back a little bit more interest.
These were the quilt front rejects.
Yes.
but it's perfect. And it's a nice extra surprise when you turn it over and see these blocks on the back.
One of the things about this quilt, the picture probably doesn't do it as much justice because those little stars really do twinkle. And when I wrote about this quilt, I said that both Nancy and I, we were thinking how wonderful it would be to have this quilt in maybe a little dark spot or whatever, because it would just bring a lot of light to the room and a lot of joy and happiness. It's a very happy quilt.
You just sort of smile when you see it.
Absolutely. I agree with that totally. And it actually took my breath away when we put it up to take a picture of it. It just like this, it's just a special quilt. Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quilt number 548, Twinkle in the Wild by Garnett Temple Lyman and Nancy Sneed.